Welcome to the Dirty Verdict Podcast, where your hosts, trial lawyers Kyle Herbert and Bill Ogden, and mediator Peter Taaffe talk with interesting lawyers and break down recent legal news in detail. Here's Kyle, Bill, and Peter.
All right, welcome back to another edition of the Dirty Verdict Podcast. I am mediator Peter Taaffe.
I am genius litigator Kyle Herbert.
And I'm Bill Ogden.
Nothing, no descriptors?
No, I don't really like to, people to label me as a trial lawyer just because I'm amazing at it. I don't want that to be my identity,
What was the last time you were like a professional stretcher?
Yeah, I was a professional stretcher. I go out and people pay to watch me stretch out, and they're in hamstrings, quads, all that kind of stuff.
You don't stretch the people out; they watch you. And,
they just
copy you.
I'm just an exhibitionist.
Okay. For me, lately, if you begin a conversation by saying, "Tell me about your yoga practice," or "Tell me about your weight loss journey," I just get up and leave.
How many times has that happened?
Once for each.
Okay.
It lasts like 8 months.
Okay.
And
But he's practiced, so if anyone else out there wants to...
he's locked and loaded on that one.
Moving on to more substantive things, we are very fortunate to be joined by Carmen Roe. Carmen, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
We talk about law stories on occasion, and we're not too good at it, but you are much more professional and good at it. So we hope to learn some things today from Carmen.
Absolutely.
Carmen, your background, you primarily practice criminal appellate law?
Criminal trial, appeals, state and federal. Wow. So I do it all.
And you've had your own firm for quite some time?
Since 2005.
And when did you get out of law school?
2004.
Okay, good. So you got right into it.
I did.
So I know you were University of Houston grad?
University of Houston undergrad, St. Mary's Law School.
Okay. Back-to-back U of H grads for our last couple. Yes.
Something different.
Yeah, good. Well, we're very big, or at least I am, fan of U of H here on the show. It's funny how we do have a lot of U of H.
I mean, we're in Houston.
Yeah, it's good.
weird.
Yeah, that is odd, isn't it? So, all right, so getting out from St. Mary's, how did you end up coming to Houston to form your firm here?
Well, I grew up in Clear Lake, so my family's here. Came back to Houston because I had a job at a firm doing criminal trials and appeals and post-conviction. Worked there for a little while and realized that I was going to be better on my own. And so took the plunge, was aggressive and tenacious, and somehow survived. And I'm very proud to say that I'm one of these very rare people who've never been a prosecutor and have always done defense.
I think this is our second Clear Lake Falcon. Didn't we have another Clear Lake person?
Was Keir McAlpine Clear Lake?
No.
We got Friendswood. We got Deer Park.
We had a lot of
Clear Lake in the middle.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, this came up in our
Angelina.
pre-planning session today.
Clear Brook.
Clear Brook. Ooh, like the dirty side of that county.
This came up. We spent hours prepping. And talking and kind of practicing and voice tune-up. But one thing we query in our prep was Clear Lake. Is it clear? And is it really a lake?
I've seen the bottom of Clear Lake. It's horrifying.
Carmen, you care to opine on that?
I think it's not clear, but I think it is a lake.
Man-made.
This is something that a lot of people spend time on. I can tell you it's a flip-flop community with coolers and beer everywhere, and it's lovely.
You don't
We like
live
that.
down there, do you?
I do not, but my family still does, so I'm representing for my people.
There you go.
And it's a great suburban area to grow up in. So
Home of NASA.
Among many.
And Andrea Yates.
True.
Okay, so
Well, hold on. Was
criminal.
Andrea Yates the one with the kids?
I think she's Clear Lake, right?
I actually worked at NASA, and I worked on the Andrea Yates case when I first came out of law school.
Who was the lady across the street from me that killed her husband, ran him over at the hotel in Clear Lake?
That was Clara Harris.
Clara Harris.
Not to be confused with, we'd confuse her with Laura Smithers, which was also a tragic story out of that area.
So the Clara Harris, I grew up in the house across the street from Clara Harris, and I knew that I was an intern at the DA's office at the time of her trial. So I knew the prosecutor, the judge, the deceased, the accused, and one of the defense lawyers. It was pretty awesome.
That's funny. How long ago was that? Like 04?
03.
Yeah.
It's one of the highest profile cases in this area.
Yeah. I remember it because I was a junior in high school.
And you were like, if your girlfriend invites you to the parking lot of the Hilton Hotel, don't go.
Nope.
Bad news.
Stay inside.
You'll get rolled.
Jeez.
Okay, so Carmen, criminal law, none of us have practiced, except Bill said he had one criminal trial, but most of us have not really done much criminal work. What drew you to that type of practice?
I love it. It is difficult work, but incredibly rewarding. And there's a great need for people who can put aside their judgment and work hard for people who may or may not have done something wrong. So we do a lot of damage control. And in a few cases, we deal with really bad people who, still have the right to a good defense and still need someone to stand in between them and an overly aggressive prosecutor or judge. And that's what I do.
Wow.
To me, like when we all, as kids, thought about lawyers, it was always criminal lawyers. So that's what
I wanted to do. And then in law school, I worked for a bigger criminal defense lawyer. I no longer wanted to after that. We can talk about it afterwards if you want to name.
They definitely have, criminal lawyers have much cooler stories.
Way cooler.
Okay, and then going out on your own, you just thought you had the confidence as a first-year lawyer to just jump in and figured you could do this.
Well, perhaps, but honestly, I just made that decision on my own because it felt like it was necessary for me. Practicing criminal defense work is very difficult because you put a lot of yourself into it. And I guess my position at that time was that my belief about what defense attorneys do and how they practice was pretty strong and didn't necessarily align with everyone in the community. And so I made a choice to do what I went to law school to do, which was practice the way I wanted to practice and represent the kind of people I wanted to represent.
So did you intern at a criminal firm? Did you say that?
I did. I interned everywhere. I'm one of these people that's done it all.
Sure.
So I interned with the Court of Criminal Appeals, the United States Attorney's Office, a law firm here, 2 law firms here, both defense firms, prior to going out on my own.
Which ones, if you want to say?
Well, probably not.
Okay. I didn't say mine, so you.
Say it.
Yeah. You show me yours, I'll show you mine. I think I get it.
It's interesting. Like law firms or civil law firms, typically, there's a ton of solo small firms, but there's a lot of firms, with multiple lawyers. Criminal, really not so much. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that most criminal defense attorneys aren't team players. And I do like a team aspect of that type of work. And so that's important to me. I also think that it's really easy to be a solo because of what I said. Everybody kind of has a different way of doing things. They want to represent different types of clients. Rusty Hardin, for example, doesn't represent anyone who's not innocent. He doesn't represent individuals who commit sexual offenses and so on and so forth. So he really gets to pick and choose what types of cases he works on.
Except for Deshaun Watson, right?
No, I said only the innocent ones.
Oh, okay.
And I think that was on the civil side.
True. Yeah, he was not indicted.
He was actually involved in the criminal actions as well. Yeah.
Breaking news.
Well, there was a criminal investigation that did not result in an indictment.
Correct. They were no-billed by 2 different grand juries. It's a criminal matter.
And why? Because Rusty only represents innocent people.
Exactly.
There you go.
See, the math still works out perfectly.
Exactly.
Okay, and so you, aside from practicing criminal law, are you associated with one of the news stations in particular?
I am. I'm very blessed. So I am the legal analyst for Channel 11 here in Houston, and I'm actually the first female who's ever been a legal analyst in Houston. Many of my friends and colleagues are analysts for other channels. There's actually only 3 here in Houston. So it's pretty rare air to be part of that. So.
Pretty cool.
So did you replace Dean Treese? I know he did a bunch of legal stuff for Channel.
I would never
Not that you
replace Dean Treese, but yes, he was the analyst prior to me being hired.
But he handled everything.
He did. He was a jack of all trades. I could not do what he did, which was answer cold call questions like on Saturday or Sunday or whatever.
Yeah.
Ranging from like property to civil to criminal to estate planning. It was amazing to watch. So I'm no Gerald Trees.
Yeah, he was great though.
I used to watch that show and just laugh.
It was unfortunate that he died when he did, because with COVID, I think that would have probably been the largest funeral in the history of funerals.
Yeah.
Because I think that would have been, 10,000 people would have shown up to that.
So through that process, when they call you and say, hey, we want you to talk about the story, how do you prep for that?
Well, contrary to popular belief, I don't actually know everything. So I do a lot of research. I mean, I look into criminal cases, civil cases. I read the lawsuits. I read a lot of the media that's already out there to make sure that, what I have is the best information. And specifically with criminal actions, you look into the law, make sure you remember it correctly, look into the facts and apply them, and then put it all together into some magical space that I have about 30 seconds to 2 minutes to speak in.
Yeah, that is a unique trait in and of itself, to figure out how to condense relevant information into you got 22 minutes is the whole news for a 30-minute segment, 22 minutes of content.
And that's the hard part about doing legal analysis, is that you're taking very complicated, convoluted concepts and topics and things and putting them into little sound bites that regular people can understand, that are short and sweet, but that are complete in a thought that makes sense. So if you don't say everything or you miss something, believe me, you'll get a call. I get calls from lawyers all the time, and they're like, you should have said this or that. And it's like, I had 30 seconds. I did what I could. So we do the best we can to get good information into a very small space, but it can be tricky.
It's like Bill's brain.
It's a struggle. It's a constant struggle. I'm just trying to keep up with everybody's names at this point.
So I'm Peter. Pete. Sometimes come by Pete.
We used to do name tags. It was weird.
It's really helpful.
So typically when they do the filming, will it be 10 minutes and then they decide what they're going to use?
And that's the other thing. Yes, you can do a 5-minute, 10-minute, or 20-minute interview, and they cut it however they want to fit the story and to go into a package. And so the other issue is I don't get to choose how they cut it. And I see it on the news just like everyone else.
I once got interviewed for the Bluebell Listeria cases.
Do people still eat that?
Yeah. Well, it's because it's delicious, but
Yeah, I do.
They intentionally, in my opinion, murdered a bunch of elderly people.
So like I drove across town to have my interview done in a suit in front of like a ice cream shop.
Just a random ice cream shop?
Was it seersucker?
No.
Okay.
But I did get a cone. It doesn't matter. And I did, no kidding, like a 15, 20-minute interview. And then they wanted to like shoot it again, which I stood there for. And then I told all my friends, and I ran home and turned the news on.
6 seconds.
And it is literally me going, a jury will decide.
I realized when the first time I got interviewed was during the ITC case, and it was like a full-blown sit down. It was like 3 minutes, and they had like B-roll of us walking through and all that. I was like, oh, this is cool. Never happened since. Ever since then, it has been a 20-minute interview, and then it's like, we're here for justice.
Right.
And that's it. I'm like, so I always try to add those in now just so I can, the sound bites.
Bill, do we have some awesome criminal cases to talk about?
I don't know. Ask Peter.
Well, I was going to say, if you don't mind, since we have a professional commentator here, I thought we would move right into the news.
I mean, this is a treat.
segment.
Like, we always deal with boring, somebody tripped and fell at a Specs.
What? We talked about the woman trying to beat her way out of a freezer a second ago. It's pretty interesting. I felt really bad.
I'm telling you, I'm excited about these criminal
No, I am too, though. This is fun.
Yeah, okay, so we're going to lead off. Typically, Carmen, if I lead off with a story that's kind of has some bathroom humor type stuff, other people on this show will talk about, they'll weave that into every single other story. So I'm going to start.
Well, time out. Hold on. First of all, we don't weave it in. You open the door, and then I toss Kyle through it.
By the way,
I do throw some shun
not
along.
subtle, dog toys for poop jokes shaped like Jack Daniels bottles. I mean,
Or a hotel manager sucking on a guy's toe.
throwing gasoline onto an already lit fire.
That's on you. Don't throw that on our shoulders.
That is humanity.
Don't accuse us of being juvenile.
Okay, well, we're going to go a little serious on the first one. This is something that I think, Carmen could have some thoughts on too. So the story that came out was Fort Bend County Jail was accused of denying prisoner cancer treatment, resulting in his death. That was a story that was on, was it on CBS?
It was on Channel 13.
Okay, KTRK.
Yep.
Okay, so good news is the lawyer that filed that case and was interviewed is sitting to my left.
He's very talented. He's very attractive, and he's very well spoken
Now,
and well read. Humble.
I was watching the story and I saw this lawyer who looked very familiar to me, sounded familiar to me. His name was Bob Ogden.
Josh, if you put the visual of Bob Ogden on there, I'm going to be upset.
That son of a bitch, Bob Ogden. Who doesn't love the guy?
Now they put it in the story. They said Bill.
Yeah, they said Bill, and then in the written story it says Bill. But on I had like 30 text messages from friends of like, this Bob guy's pretty attractive, and I was like, I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. So Bill/Bob, I think you touched on this on maybe one of the ends of right when you'd filed the case.
No, it was after the last time we all met. I said, hey, I'm filing this case. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to take it. And then I have a medical consulting team take a look at any cases dealing with med mal or really any complicated injuries that I don't know, which is most of them. And it took them a while to get through some of the stuff. And they sent it back to me and immediately said, we need to talk. And when I got on the phone, they said, this is the most egregious thing I've ever seen. And they've done 50,000 personal injury cases. I mean, they have seen it all. And they were like, this is the most egregious thing I've ever seen. For 2 months leading up to when they found him and transported him to the hospital, every single day, my client, the deceased asked the nurse in the facility, can I please have cancer medication? Nope. Every single day. And they found him unresponsive in his cell. By the time they got him to the hospital, his white blood cell count was -1.
What kind of cancer did he have?
Liver.
That seems like a bad one.
Yeah, and so the thing is, it's one of those things where you might not save them. You can't cure them, I don't think, but it's treatable. And if anything, even if it's not treatable, you can give them something to not just sit there and suffer for 6 months. But yeah, by the time they got him to a hospital, he was not savable.
And you filed a case in the Southern District of Texas, Houston Division?
Correct. Against Fort Bend County, and then the sheriff at the time, the congressman now, Nels.
Okay.
Troy Nels.
And how long ago did this happen? When did he die?
He died. We got it, had to reevaluate it. It took us a little while. So he died. We filed it day before the statute ran. So it's about 2 years old. And Fort Bend County knew that it was in the chamber because Texas Rangers have to do their investigation, no offense to Texas Rangers, but wasn't my... I didn't
Not
think
as thorough as you would expect.
In any shape, form, or fashion. And then you start going into the databases that have the numbers of how many people die in custody. And I really was shocked. You probably know more than I, but it is, in Harris County, it's an astronomical number. In Fort Bend County, it was way more than I thought. And so in the news article, they went, because I cite some of that in our petition, shout out to the Dirty Verdict podcast, because my co-counsel, Joe Malugin, I learned...
You met?
Yeah, we met through here on an interview, and he helped me with a lot of it.
If you guys get big bucks on this case, maybe we can afford the helmet cams.
Unless Pete still probably voted down.
I think I approved helmet cams. It was submitted. I signed off. Josh, it's in the works, right? Yeah, he's pricing them.
He's going to be pricing them for $90.
Sensible. We're not going to get the Porsche version, but we'll get right one. So what is the civil cause of action? Is it statute?
So it's kind of weird because it's a med mal case, but it's in custody again, and the consent for treatment and certain things goes through the county rather than your next of kin on certain things. So it all falls under 1983 under the civil rights statute, including the medical providers. And I shout out to Fort Bend County. They communicated with me once they found out I was involved. They reached out, the county attorney's office, and then after I filed, I sent them a courtesy copy of the petition. Said, "Hey, this is coming," and their entire litigation team reached out to me and said, "Hey, we're still evaluating what we want to do, but we'd like to sit down and meet and see what we can do. We think there's other wrongdoers in this case potentially." but they wanted to open up a dialogue quickly, which is kind of opposite for what I've dealt with when it comes to county attorneys in cases like this, specifically with Harris County. So
have they filed an answer yet? Or
no, it was they got served early last week, so they've got some time. And then I actually agreed to give them an extension. So they said they'd accept service for Congressman Nels if I give an extension. I said, sure, I'll give you an extension anyway. So I get it.
So, Carmen, have you commentated on these civil rights, prisoner abuse type cases, or handled any?
No, I don't do civil rights work. I really do only criminal. But I will say this about that. If there are wrongdoers, they should charge them. And if any regular person outside of that jail did the same or something similar, they would be charged. And they'd be charged with a felony and held accountable for that kind of behavior because it's inhumane. I mean, whether you can save somebody or not, you cannot let them languish in your custody. And if you do, then you've committed a criminal offense.
I agree. And I think the thing that made this case kind of stick with me was, one, the facts are horrific, but two, he went in January 2020, and then COVID hit, and he didn't have the money for bail, so we had an innocent. He's innocent, just sitting in jail waiting for trial, and then COVID backed up.
He wasn't in prison; he was in jail.
No, he was in Fort Bend County Jail, in custody. He just couldn't make bail. He was in custody awaiting trial. He's an innocent man.
But that's an important distinction. Most people don't know the difference between jail and prison. Prison is where you go after you've been convicted and sentenced. Jail is where you are until you have a trial and you are convicted or you are sentenced, particularly in cases involving felonies. Some misdemeanor jail time is served in a county jail, but for the most part, it's a holding cell for individuals to await trial and to await the state to get the evidence to decide what the value of the case is. And to your point, Harris County, which has way too many people in it, which is why the numbers are higher than other counties, Fort Bend suffers from the same problem. That county keeps growing bigger and bigger. They built onto the jail because they couldn't keep all the people in the area in a safe space. And the sad truth is most people don't care anything about criminal defendants, whether they're in jail or they're in prison, because there is a stigmatism and an assumption made about them being arrested that they must have done something wrong. And so they don't deserve to be out and they don't deserve to be treated well. And until people start understanding that their loved ones are presumed innocent and in a jail, or that, prison systems like the one we have here in Texas, where there's no AC, where they don't give them 8 hours of sleep, that these are the kinds of things that we should all concern ourselves with, because God forbid you have a loved one who gets into that facility and then all of a sudden you're so concerned about the things that people in my business see every single day and no one cares.
Yeah, I got I was in the news a little bit for this one last week, or week before last. Somebody that's very close to me reached out to me and said, yeah, I get it. It's wrong, but I don't want to be the one paying for the cancer treatment. And I'm like, okay, then don't lock him in a cage. Give him a reconnaissance bond and let them go get it. Because if he's not convicted, and if they're not convicted and you're going to lock him in a cage, you better give them everything that they need.
Let me ask kind of maybe a dumb question, Bill. Did this request and this issue make it in front of a doctor? Or was it the jailer who was putting a wall between the care and the patient, or do you know yet?
So I know that I don't think the jailer had as much to do with it than the medical team that was contracted with the jailer.
Really?
But when I say contracted with the jailer, they become the jailer. They're a part of they're an arm of
there's like a jail medical provision company that's out there, and
yeah, I can't remember what it's called, like All Care. It's a name defendant in the case. But I think that this is their shtick is nurses and doctors that will contract with them to go into jails, or serve full time in jails to be the medical provider there. But my case, the sister, who's the representative of the estate, actually got concerned because nobody told anybody that he was struggling with his health. And she hadn't heard from her brother in a while. And so she got nervous. And then his cellmate was the one that called the family to tell him that he hadn't left his bed in 3 days. So she drove there and I'm by sheer luck, I think, somehow found a way to get face-to-face with the sheriff and spoke directly to him and was assured that he was getting everything he needed. The records showed that that's in no way what happened. And then anytime you have, I say anytime, I think for the most part, when you have an in-custody death, the Texas Rangers do an investigation. And the Texas Rangers did an investigation here, talked to the couple of doctors and the jailer and said, oh, he died of cirrhosis. He died from a medical reason or natural causes, and found no wrongdoing. And so when the news article ran and they started citing some of the numbers of people that died in custody, they're like, well, yeah, this many people die in custody, but 98% of those are for medical reasons. And the news called me and asked me for another comment. I was like, yeah, they classified this person as a medical reason. That's the problem, is how they're classifying them. And it's a problem. And I don't think the Texas Rangers are going to go full blown on an investigation of somebody that was in custody on a death.
What was your guy in custody for?
For robbery, I believe, like a dollar store or something like that. I don't have a ton of information on it. I'll get it.
But this is no different than Sandra Bland. In
Yeah.
custody, death.
Less question marks on this one. Yeah.
And she wasn't in custody that long. That's the reason that case brought a lot of attention, and because she was arrested.
What happened with that case, now that you mention it? Did they find any wrongdoing?
Yes, they charged the officer.
I couldn't remember.
Okay. And of course there was a lawsuit, and of course the law changed because of it, and so on and so
I
forth.
remember that.
But this case just demonstrates that, there's still changes that need to be made, which is why I said, if it's true that there's wrongdoers who stood by and didn't take action, again, what's fair is fair. They should charge them.
Charge them, if anything. If you don't charge them, at least don't let them be a public service anymore, because they're not serving the public, at least in this instance.
First of all. And second of all, civil lawsuits like the ones you're filing help to change the behavior and the policies inside these facilities, but not as quickly as we need it to save lives and to keep people safe and keep their loved ones safe.
And it works kind of both ways for me, because when I get cases like this, there's always media involved, and I appreciate it because it spreads the message of what's going on, and that, I think, the media aspect of it makes way more change to these counties or government agencies than what they have to pay in a lawsuit, because they're all politicians at the top, and they don't want bad press. So I welcome any cameras when it comes to those cases.
The Sandra Bland civil case, settled for $1.9 million against
that's cheap in my opinion.
Waller County in the Texas Department of Public Safety. So I think we've talked in prior cases about
with Joe.
Travis County has settled a ton of those as well. So quick question, you kind of touched on this, Carmen, and I'll feign total ignorance, or not feign, I'll admit it. Feign it.
Finally, he admits it. We've been alleging it for decades.
So bond reform, I thought there was some law or some talk of some bipartisan changes to bond reform, which would hopefully let people not be held forever for minor crimes. Did anything happen? Has anything happened on that front?
Oh, my goodness. Bond reform is a big issue in Texas, certainly in Harris County and other counties where judges are giving they're giving too many PR bonds, meaning they can leave on their own recognizance without paying a bond, or bonds that are too low, and so on and so forth. So the way it's been explained to me is the pendulum swings from one side to the other side, and we really need to be somewhere in the middle. So it used to be that we would set all these bonds really high. You could never get a PR bond, certainly not for a felony. If you did get a bond and you picked up anything in the way of a new offense, you would not get back out of custody. So we held a lot more people at a lot higher bond amounts. So then the bond reform goes into play, especially here in Harris County. Pendulum swings all the way to the other side, and we see people that are on 2 or 3 capital murder bonds, which is unheard of and completely unreasonable.
What does that mean? They've been charged with capital murder and they've been released on bond?
Correct.
On a no bond.
Then they're charged with another felony offense, let's say a murder, and they're given another bond. And the idea that a murder or capital murder offense could somehow justify a second bond once you pick up a new violent offense is kind of a crazy concept for defense attorneys, certainly for prosecutors, but it started happening regularly. And
Kind of makes you want to never be a witness to a murder.
well, and that's the other thing. I mean, there's been a lot of fear and retaliation and charges associated with that and violence towards those individuals. And it's really very frustrating because the bond reform needed to happen. However, again, I think we've taken it a little too far in Harris County and in other counties to the extent that we would let violent offenders continue to be released on a bond when the statute permits them to be held without bond if they commit a felony and they pick up a new felony.
You know it's a problem when criminal defense lawyers are saying bond reform went too far.
Listen, I'm not the average criminal defense attorney, and I'm not speaking to...
I've heard a lot of them.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, you know, it concerns everyone. We all live in this community, and everybody wants, you know, safety in the community and respect for both sides of the bar. I mean, when prosecutors are down there asking for high bonds and judges are setting them low anyway, that's not how the system's supposed to work. It's supposed to be that prosecutors ask for bond, defense attorneys argue about what's a fair bond. Maybe we have a hearing, we flesh out some issues, and then the judge decides. And we seem to have kind of gotten off of that a little bit. So I will say this about that, which I think is a good reminder. Bonds are something that all the parties involved impact. So it's not the judge, it's not the prosecutor, it's not the defense attorney. All three play a role and should play a role in determining what is an appropriate bond for very specific cases.
At this point, it's my understanding that there's only one player right now, and that's the judge.
I don't think that's true, and that's what I guess I mean.
Okay.
A lot of people blame bond issues on the judge as if they live in a vacuum, and that's not true. The truth is that every person in this group plays a role, and they should, in every single case. So the judge only knows what the parties tell them, for example. They rely on that information from the prosecutor or from the defense. And if they don't get any information, then they're left to make decisions without information.
Which if you have no information, a zero bond is appropriate because the person's not convicted.
Prohibited by statute. There's
I get it.
Presumption in favor of a bond. And back to your client who unfortunately stayed in custody too long, you can't just hold people without a bond. You have to set a bond. So if you have to set a bond, you try to make decisions about what is an appropriate bond based on the information that you have in front of you.
So, one, we're all civil lawyers, and two, a lot of listeners aren't lawyers. Tell us
A lot. That's
what
generous.
a bond is for.
A bond is to really ensure that you show up for court
Right.
and to ensure the safety of the community. Those are the two factors that primarily bond impacts.
Are those two factors equally weighted?
No.
Okay.
It depends. That's why I said the other thing about bond is it depends on the type of offense we're talking about. A misdemeanor theft of, some kitchen pans is not going to be looked at the same way as a robbery case, for example, or a murder. And so in these two violent offenses, you're going to look more to the community and safety. Maybe these people get an ankle monitor, but we'll set a bond that's maybe sufficient for you to get out and to come back to court, because we don't think there's going to be an issue with your attendance in court, but there may be an issue with safety. Who knows? The theft client, we're more worried about them showing up to court, probably not getting an ankle monitor.
Okay.
So everything is, and then of course they have a criminal history that you look into if it exists, et cetera, et cetera. But every single case should be looked at individually based on the person that's in front of you, ties to the community, whether they can show up and afford to deal with all of the pretrial services hoops that you're supposed to jump through, even when you get a PR bond. And then, of course, whether the community would be safe, meaning, are you going to go out and commit another violent offense?
When someone is arrested, and let's say they don't have funds to hire a criminal attorney, will the appointment of an attorney be made prior to this bond determination being made?
That is a great question. So we have a new system here in Harris County where we are giving them attorneys to assist in the bonding process. prior to a court-appointed lawyer that would be appointed once they're in the courtroom. So very early on, it's because we're making difficult decisions regarding bond without a lot of information. So now we're getting counsel for these individuals who can then work with the prosecutor and inform the judge so that we're all making better decisions.
I was down in Galveston County a month or so ago. Young lady is brought in for a bond hearing. She had been arrested for distributing meth, a large amount of meth. And
Oh yeah, we talked about this.
the bond was $100,000. She gets out. She gets picked up for some other offense not to do with meth. They put her in jail for a couple of days. In that period, she begins like importing, distributing, and selling meth inside the jail.
Or manufacturing and so.
And so she's now in jail for the first meth offense, some other offense, and then a second meth offense. And there's a bond hearing now for the second meth offense, I suppose. And the original bond was $100,000. The prosecutor was arguing for a $200,000 bond. And the judge, I believe, arrived at $300,000 as the new bond. And I thought to myself, I mean, this is a pretty serious effort to make a bunch of bad decisions in a very short amount of time. And I'm sure she's innocent and it's a frame-up job, but still, selling meth inside jail, that's impressive. That shows
She's a pro.
shows
She's
motivation.
an absolute pro. This is not amateur hour.
You can't, that sort of commitment to a craft is impressive, especially in the drug trade.
If you train for something your whole life, you don't want to not use it. That's why presidents can't trust their generals.
You know, people will say something's impossible until it's done. Nelson Mandela said that.
No way, that's impossible that he said that. See what I did there?
All right.
Pete,
All right, listen, I'll conclude. Best Bond movie to learn about bonds, Midnight Run. Charles Grodin, Robert De Niro.
I was going to say any of the Bond movies with Pierce Brosnan.
Oh, well, yeah.
I was going to say The Spy Who Loved Me or From Russia with Love. Interestingly enough, I worked in the bond forfeiture division of the district attorney's office in Harris County, and it was some of the weirdest stuff I've ever seen. Just bond revocation hearings, like so interesting. They never show up for their bond revocation hearing. I was there once, and a lady actually showed up, and I had no idea what to do. I'm not kidding. I worked there for 2 years. I had probably done 3,000 bond revocations. Like you walk in and you read out the names, and then the judge goes, well, they're not here. The bond's revoked. We actually had a lady show up, and I'm calling out the names on the bond revocation docket.
Here.
And she goes, here. And I walk over, and I was like, is your name blah, blah, blah? Yeah. Is this your social security number? Yeah. I was like,
You should have said, what are you offering?
come with me. I'm in law school. I'm not gonna...
You just say, what are you offering? Put the ball in their court.
So I kind of sat there dumbfounded, and then I walked over to the bailiff, and I was like, hey, somebody actually showed up.
What do I do?
For the bond revocation hearing. And she's like, oh, just tell her to come sit next to me. I was like, don't you think she'll think that's suspicious? And the bailiff is like, I don't know, man. She was dumb enough to show up to the bond revocation hearing. I was like, okay.
Well, let me say this about that. Bond revocation hearings used to mean you're going into custody. If you showed up, you're going into custody. It's not even a question. We'll talk about it later.
I would assume so.
Custody. Now, that's not the case. So if I go down on a bond revocation hearing, it's something we can talk about, something we can set for a hearing, something that does not result in automatically going into custody. And those are the kinds of things that we're seeing.
Is that a good or a bad thing?
I think it's a bad thing.
No.
It's a good
Wow, Kyle.
Crossfire.
Wow.
this ridiculousness.
Everything she said is nonsense.
Applications. I mean, something, my ankle monitor, the battery didn't work. Do you know how many times they take those things in because they malfunction? That's a bond revocation.
I don't,
If
but
you
Bob does.
Get in time, and you don't get in for your curfew, and you're a few minutes late, and they call me, and I go down there, and I'm like, look, what had happened was, and then they fix
What had happened?
Okay.
Those little things used to result in people being pulled back and put in custody.
And we know who to thank for it.
Kyle Herbert.
I always felt like it was they would get arrested for some other thing, and they would kind of use because you could find a condition to revoke bond very easily, as
Yes.
you're just alluding to. So they used that as a way to get what they thought was a bad person back into jail.
Yes.
Without having to go through the formal process.
That was called violating civil rights and corruption.
Yeah. Well,
I would also like
Thanks,
to talk
Pete.
about the huge line that everybody sees who's downtown that's around the building.
Golly.
God bless them. And
I always assumed that's where they sold those good chicken sandwiches.
I wish there was something happening down there that would justify that line, but there's not. And when people get into the building and they're late, their bond's revoked.
okay.
We don't do that anymore. This is what I'm saying. There's a lot of really good bond reform in Harris
Good.
County.
There's some questionable. I as soon as we started talking bond reform, which is way off topic, a little bit off topic. Wasn't the sheriff or constable that was the sick who got killed, and the person that killed him was out on bond? That was what kind of blew it up and gave everybody the ammo to try to start taking it back. Or am I? It was the sheriff that wore the turban, and he got killed in the line of duty.
Yeah.
And I think if I remember, but I could be wrong on that. Maybe I'm wrong.
That's a politician's worst nightmare, is someone getting released on bond at some low amount and then them going and killing someone.
Absolutely.
Well, I know it's happened a couple times in Harris County. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, turning the page.
Thank God.
Trying to find some stories that kind of
Find something more serious to talk about, Peter.
that intersect our two worlds.
Well, I
All
think we just gave probably one of the more entertaining bond reform, dialogues. So
Yeah.
Which is great for our bond reform
listeners,
audience.
Yep.
If you came here for bond reform discussion, welcome.
Are there still really bounty hunters like in Midnight Run that someone skips bond is the term used and they go track them down?
I mean, I think there are, but I really think it's only the dog guy, whatever his
Okay.
name is. But I think that's
When
I was should be criminal. If it's not, it's riding a very fine line.
Well, they're wearing like vests with bond agent on it, and they got like bear spray.
when I was first out of law school, or maybe still in law school, there was an assistant DA who went to Mexico
Drop a name.
with his who went across the border with his DA badge to try and bring a fugitive across the border. I don't know if you know this, but those border agents are not quite as stupid as they're made out to look in the movies.
On which side?
Yes,
Okay.
both sides.
Okay.
So they made it to U.S. Customs, and the guy was like, "Pardon me, sir, why do you have a man tied up in your back seat?"
He's like,
Yeah,
badge.
yeah, and that's right. He showed him a badge, and he said, "This is a district attorney's ID, not a badge for law enforcement."
Did he say at ease?
He said, "These are not the droids you're looking for." Anyways, it didn't work out well.
Oh.
Yeah,
Let's say back to you. Come with me.
Yeah.
That's what he said. Come with me.
yeah.
That's not. Those are three bad words.
Come with me.
Come
Yeah.
with me.
I'd never say that to anybody.
Right.
So, all right, changing gears. Taboo nightclub on Ridge.
Yes.
Anyone been there? That's it.
Oh, that was a weird pause.
That's where I met Bob the first time.
Okay. That's yeah. When he goes to Taboo nightclub,
Found
sitting next to me goes by Bob.
Yeah, that's my taboo name.
That's it.
$200 bottle service. That's it. That's not a bad deal.
So Taboo has had a series of violent incidents, including shootings. Last week, the city of Houston sued them to try to
Shut them down, right?
declare, common or public nuisance. And then on the heels of that, our friends at Abraham Watkins have sued them on behalf of one of the gentlemen that was shot there, and they're suing all the management companies. I don't think it says the story of the property owners. I didn't pull the lawsuit yet.
Do we have any comment from the good lawyers at Abraham Watkins? Anybody reached out?
It's a Mo case. I didn't talk to him. I just saw it this morning, but yeah.
It just happened yesterday. So they're suing. I think it looks like J&R Weber Investments, the Luxury Financial Group, Michael Collins.
The guy who orbited the moon while Neil and Buzz landed for the first time?
That's not fair. He's done a lot for America.
Can't be the same Michael Collins.
And the land was owned by PHCG Investments. And then I'm guessing, but in the city of Houston's lawsuit, they sued an entity owned by the Pappas family, the barbecue and steaks and all that. It looked like it had been one of their properties that had been repurposed into Taboo.
By the way, it's TABU with a little accent mark over
Yes.
the U.
Nice. So TABOO.
I'm not sure how it's pronounced.
Okay, so
Taboo.
Carmen, have you been involved ever with any kind of these common nuisance shutting down, defending someone or representing someone the city was trying to shut down?
No, I've actually dealt with individuals who've been impacted by that, but not represented them directly. But I think it's an interesting concept that the city would shut people down as a public nuisance. I think it's an interesting way to get a handle on some of these apartment complexes, bars, nightclubs, et cetera, that are going too far, or their patrons are going too far. So I'd be interested to see what happens, but I understand that the city of Houston is aggressively pursuing this nightclub because of the violence that's been showing up on a regular basis there.
The violence showing up on a regular basis there makes the civil lawsuits easier.
Yeah.
Because,
well, it's a civil act.
I used to live at Richmond I used to live at Westheimer and Fountain View.
Well, we're on Richmond as we speak right now.
Well, we're not exactly on Fountain View. It's about 4 miles that way.
True.
Slightly different.
You used to live in that area?
I used to live in that area, and I will tell you, the complexion, maybe that's the wrong word.
No, it used to be like a bar where people...
Like the restaurants and bar scene that used to be on that part of town is kind of what's up on Washington now.
Yeah, that was kind of the original kind of strip of bars in Houston.
And even 20 years ago, 15 years ago when I lived there, like there have been places that I've gone back to, like on random trips to the west side of town. I'm like, oh, let's go to this pizza parlor.
they have a great lunch buffet.
Well, and you walk in now to the pizza parlor, and it's still a pizza parlor, but they're like, do you want bottle service? I'm like, do I want a bottle of vodka at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday?
Maybe.
How did you know?
Like, where have you been my whole life?
Right?
It's interesting how, the scene changes, but weird that these places become, like, there's nice houses very near there. Like,
Well, you used to frequent there, and it was a going out hotspot. Then you stopped, and look at it now. That's what happens when you stop going places, Kyle.
are you saying that my personality in and of itself sways the criminal element in the city? Because if that's what you're saying, Bob, probably right.
Well, I'm saying it more because, like, when somebody looks at Kyle and then they look at me and they're like, that guy's going places, I just go, I sure hope not.
Not with this guy.
Well, here comes the violence.
All right, we moving on, and there's a lot of stories that we all talked about in our pre-planning, but I'm trying to focus on ones since we have benefit of a
You guys
criminal
talked
court.
about a couple that sounded really interesting to me.
We
The guy that disappeared, and then the trial just got postponed for 8 months.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me go over a couple others. So this one's interesting. 82-year-old Crawford, home of George W. Bush woman in Kyle's favorite county, McClellan County, Waco.
Sick and bears.
Bear down.
So she was scammed into putting $15,000 into a Bitcoin
ATM machine. Yeah. Saw that.
and goes to the
Get Kobos back in here.
Yeah, exactly. It goes to, and apparently the ATM company didn't have anything to do with it. It was someone said, go to the nearest Bitcoin ATM, put this in and enter whatever code. And she reports it to the sheriff's office. The sheriff goes and just figures out, takes it out on his own account. I don't
What do
even
you
know,
mean takes it out?
like
Withdrawals.
like figures out how to take out the money out of it.
Like stole,
Yeah.
allegedly stole from an old woman. Wait, first of all, 82-year-old woman going to an ATM Bitcoin machine? Mad props. That woman's, she's with it.
She knows more about Bitcoin than I do.
Is she with it? She's out $15,000.
They have a video apparently of her putting like $15,000 in cash into this.
It's an invest. Hey,
Go to the Bitcoin machine, I'd be like, Coinstar? Like where you put
Yeah. Yeah.
I have no idea what that is.
if she would have put her money in that Bitcoin machine this morning, she would have made 1.28% on her money right now.
Wait, so
So you tell me she's not with it.
Pete, are you telling me that there is some whiff of official impropriety regarding law enforcement in McLennan County,
Yes.
where Baylor University is located?
It's a Baptist school, Pete.
Can't imagine.
You're going to blaspheme.
There's no history of that, is there?
Pete, are you saying there's a history?
Can we just talk about that? Like,
We did not.
Oh,
Crooked.
Crooked law enforcement in that county. I don't believe it.
okay, well, so
Chip
here's
and Joanna are there.
So wasn't he just collecting it as the fruits of a crime? I mean,
Well, so the Bitcoin company, maybe they already, it went in, and then whoever the bad guy was got their 15,000 Bitcoin, and so they're holding the bag, so it's the proverbial Bitcoin bag.
Well, the problem is it's untraceable. Once you take it out and have in the wallet number, the wallet is, and you just have the ID, the actual coin ID information, you can't trace it back to anything. So that's kind of an interesting fact as well.
Yeah. So John McBain, who's at Rusty Hart and Associates, represents the Bitcoin ATM guys, and they're apparently suing the sheriff. So maybe this will help McLennan County's standing with Kyle Herbert. The sheriff who was sued, Parnell McNamara, said his officers did everything right, and the Bitcoin Depot officials can go to hell.
So is the suggestion that the cops orchestrated the delivery and then stole it, or they just had it reported to them and were like, thank you very much?
They should have, I'm sure Bitcoin Depot says you should have not gone in and taken $15,000 out of our ATM.
Was it done as like a civil forfeiture?
I
still don't understand how they.
I think there's
Parnell, if you're out there.
It's like they picked it up, they took it back to their office, they're going to hold it for trial. What's the problem?
Based on this.
Parnell's bank account, because if that's the case.
Well, I don't think it's.
give it back to her.
I don't think it's in evidence. I don't think it's in custody.
You can't give it back to her. It should be in custody. And how do we know it's not?
Yeah, so he got some kind of search warrant.
Baylor.
Yeah, he got a search.
He's got a weird thing with Baylor.
It's not true.
So she puts in the $15,000 in the Bitcoin. I mean, $100 at a time. So what is that?
It takes 45 minutes.
100. Yeah, 1,500 times she has to do that.
She's in shape.
Who has that much cash? Did you see her pimp?
If you want to find her, look for the 82-year-old woman in Waco with a giant muscular right arm, because she just did this for 4 days.
So it sounds like they went and got a subpoena or warrant, and cracks open that Bitcoin machine. It takes the 15,000 because the cash is still there. Remember, we're dealing with old world currency and new world currency.
They crack it open.
But I'm sure on the Bitcoin side, the depot or the ATM, it had already made the electronic transfer to the bad guys, and they're often wherever they are. But the actual paper money is still sitting in that ATM. So
Problem solved, sounds like.
yeah. So
Tell that to the woman with the muscular right arm.
we talked to Andrew Kobos, lawyer who does a lot of these Bitcoin things. And really, it is like I don't think collectively we still don't really understand it.
No, when it comes to Bitcoin, you just got buzzwords, right?
Yeah.
Blockchain, untraceable, no centralization. You say that, and everybody's like, that guy knows his stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That guy.
Well, yeah, it was just like, I think we determined it's just fraud. It's just that, you got to know.
It sounds like that.
You got to know. But this one was interesting. I mean, this kind of drew the two things together in the most elegant fashion.
It sounded like
hard cash, and you got on this side, and you've got Bitcoin on this side, and then you've got the sheriff saying this is a bunch of hogwash, and everyone else can go to hell.
And I'm not saying that money is going to end up in the pocket of a linebacker transferring from Boise State or anything untoward like that.
Thank you for that, because that could get us sued. You sued, maybe us.
Baylor, if you're out there, we're looking for sponsors.
I think that one's long gone. Okay, so there was a little bit of Deshaun Watson. You've commented on that in the past, haven't you?
I have.
Okay, so I think Busby had settled all, maybe has one of his cases left, but the Universal Law Group has one, and they've just added the Texans.
What is that? What's the Universal?
That's the name.
You can use trade names.
Oh yeah, I wanted Court Acres, and I wanted to start Dragon Firm, and it'd be a one-stop shop. You have defense, plaintiff, and then you have criminal defense, civil defense, like all of it, one-stop shop. Call it Dragon Firm.
I'm gonna start a firm like traditional names, and we're gonna call it Motley Crue, Megadeth, Anthrax, and Buffett, LLC.
Sounds like a fun Christmas party.
Hard to go wrong.
Yeah.
It's total side note, but that professional rule changed a while ago, and I haven't really seen a prevalence.
I remember it was probably 2 years ago, maybe, because the day it happened, I got a text from my buddy Court and was like, Dragon Firm's in. So
To be honest, I'm going to start a firm that's going to be like,
Bigger dragon firm.
no, I'm going to call it like
Dragonist.
Dragon Lord Dragon.
Busby, Jamail,
Yeah.
Watkins
O'Quinn.
law firm. O'Quinn law firm.
Featuring Arnold and Nitkin. Just all the big civil firms, all the big PI firms.
With the artist formerly known as Bill Ogden, now Bob.
I think you'd have to spend a lot of money to get to the top of the Google search on that, but it's worth a shot.
I'm not here to cause confusion in the market, Bob. I'm just here to make good use of the new rules, which allow me to use a trade.
See, when they called me Bob, I wasn't that upset about it because when they call me Bill Ogden, a lot of people get confused in Houston because there's a lawyer named Bill Ogden who represented the Chronicle. I think he just retired a couple years ago. We ran into each other once at lunch, and I was like, "Are you Bill Ogden?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Hey, I'm Bill Ogden." He was like, and we over like the first 6 years or so, people would Google and start sending me his emails, and I got invited to a rocket suite one time.
Yes.
Yeah. And I responded. I was like, I don't think you meant to send this to me. I think it's a different Bill Ogden. And it turned out the girl who was doing it for whatever company was like, we went to college together. You're still more than welcome to come. So me and my buddy actually went. The other Bill didn't show up. But
Apparently in Austin, well, still in Austin, there's the Covert family, and they own like 27 car dealerships. And they have a kid about my age, apparently named Kyle Covert. And I walked in, there used to be a row of steakhouses like on the drag near, doesn't really matter. I walked in the steakhouse once at the beginning of a date. I was like, you have a reservation for 2. And apparently I look like this guy a little bit.
so he's attractive,
Handsome.
extremely. See, and he's average, and he's an inch over the average height of males in the
Shut
US.
up, Bob. And I walk in and she's like, Kyle, are you Kyle Covert? And I was like, yes, I am.
Nailed it.
And I lived off that for like 2 years. It was
Nice.
like,
Did you have to? Did you tip extremely well though?
no. I'd be like, put it on my dad's tab. And they're like, gotcha, Kyle.
Really?
No.
Oh, that'd have been awesome.
I wouldn't do that.
Just keep it under like 1,500 or whatever the
Son
felony.
of a criminal lawyer.
Whatever the felony number is, just keep it under that.
See, also, as I understand it, and I'm not sure I do, everything we said here is attorney-client privileged because she's the Dirty Verdict's criminal lawyer. We can't be prosecuted for anything we said about Baylor University.
Nope. Can't do
Or
that.
Tom Cruise,
What did we say about Tom?
or the Scientologists. Like, whatever we want to say, it's privilege, right?
Yeah.
I hate to break it.
Just say yes.
Never paid prior to my arrival here today. So,
And I think we've,
don't-
I think disclosure to third parties kind of ruins that.
yeah. Well,
There goes Pete shitting on our parade again.
Thanks, Pete.
so I always pay the guests ahead of time, and then we could have talked. The disclosure issue would have been a different matter altogether.
Could we pay you in 1 bottle of water?
Kyle, give her one of those.
You did have a bottle of
Kyle, give her one of the Nazi toys.
No, Jacob Karen left a bunch of his Texas Outback Steakhouse or whatever
Gift cards.
gift
Gift
cards.
cards, yeah.
I've seen people
Didn't
they
he really?
always give lawyers $1. They're like, look, now it's in the cone of silence.
That's good.
Yeah.
Put that on the checklist, Josh. Dollars. Everybody's.
20 minutes. No dollars. But
Everybody put out $1.
Yeah.
Slide to the left.
Hey, I roll over like some rolls of quarters. Like I didn't have time.
I could get you $15,000 in ill-gotten Bitcoin.
Yeah, just ask a sheriff. Allegedly, ask the sheriff.
Carmen, have you ever encountered the Texas anti-SLAPP law, also known as the
Citizen Participation Act. Texas. You can't file a civil lawsuit solely for the purpose of silencing someone's civil rights. All of them.
On its face, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Application, it's much more expanded.
It is, but it basically boils down to if your petition is filed and you cannot, before discovery, set up prima facie clear and specific, not clear and convincing, clear and specific. I don't know what that means still. Evidence of every element of that you allege in your petition or complaint, then you lose and you got to pay mandatory attorney's fees to the other side. It sucks. I haven't lost one. It still sucks.
So, yeah, big picture is it was passed, and like every law, it was expanded by judges because lawyers would try to over-apply it.
Yeah. You had defense lawyers filing it in car wreck cases at one point.
And then the law then, fortunately, was made a little more sensible. So really, it's a defamation is your core.
First Amendment, more First Amendment, not necessarily defamation, but if you file a lawsuit to silence somebody's free speech or silence somebody's first, right to assemble, something like that, then you can immediately, as a defendant, file that, and if they can't lay out the facts in the four corners of their petition, you have to pay their fees, and it's dismissed early.
So in 2015, the current mayor of Colleyville, Bobby Lindemood, filed filed a lawsuit against his opponent, saying that they had he had defamed him through some political literature, saying he was a fraud or what have you. So he sued him for defamation. Well, SLAPP law led to the dismissal of the claim, and so it was appealed. Bottom line is, Mayor Lindemood has now been ordered to pay $200,000 in attorney's fees to the opponent.
Colleyville?
In Colleyville, which would, I guess,
$200K goes a long way in Colleyville.
Well, and the fact that it was appealed, that explains a lot more why the number is what it is. Because $200,000 in fees is a lot. You got to prove it up. You have to, do an affidavit and all this good stuff.
So what was the beef? What did they call each other?
No,
just in general, he probably said, that guy's a fraud. And he's like, I'm going to sue you for defamation. And when he did, the other guy used the anti-SLAPP, guy or girl, I don't know, used the anti-SLAPP statute to say, all right,
through $200,000
because they appealed it. And it's and to brief the TCPA, these are 50, 60, 70 page motions, and then it has to have a hearing, and it's all within a very short time frame. You only have a certain amount of time to do it, and the judge has to hear it and rule on it within a certain amount of time.
Sounds exhausting.
It is. I did it once. Actually, I didn't even do it. Mark Banks in our office did it, but I just sat through it, and it was exhausting.
So any more background facts on Lindemood or Lindegard?
that was it. It was just, he's on the hook for $200,000, I guess, personally.
It's personal. Yep.
It's the mayor of Colleyville?
Yeah.
It's a bankruptcy case now.
What is the salary for the mayor of Colleyville?
We can look that up.
Not, probably.
I bet it's
$200,000 a week. You're gonna find that?
Well,
Okay. While you're
Keep
doing
going.
that, Bill, here's another Harris County kind of case that has some criminal ramifications. Harris County is sued. Oh wait, no. Harris County sues Wrong House trying to recoup costs relating to dog bite. A dog biting a Precinct 5 deputy constable.
Lien case.
Yes. So I guess they alleged that they took a K-9 unit to a house and dog, I guess, was injured or bit someone. Oh, no, the homeowner's dog bit the deputy or the constable.
It's a dog-eat-dog world out there, Pete.
So that's the thing. The county can sue, like if they got, so their guy got bit, he had
Could sue the property like in rem?
Yeah, so you go, so comp pays the injuries, and then the county's comp division turns around and sues the property owner's insurance company, I would assume, to recoup the amount of money they paid for time off and for the injury treatment. County, I would say.
That was the county, so deputy.
But city can do it as well.
So the story was, it's just kind of interesting. The story was that Harris County, when they were suing to recover
they sued the wrong house.
they sued the wrong homeowner.
Bonehead.
And you know what that the homeowner of the wrong house should have done? Filed an anti-SLAPP.
Yeah.
Because if they filed that anti-SLAPP, they would have won, and their attorneys would have gotten paid.
This is what working from home will do to you. This was a huge oversight.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You guys had one job.
No, I've met some of the lawyers that work for the city and the county. It might not have been an oversight. They might have used all their brain power and still reached this conclusion.
Okay, well, I think we've covered the watershed on. We definitely have some other news that we can cover later, but I wanted to focus on one since we had the benefit of a criminal law subject matter expert to educate us on things.
Fire away.
That was it. I'm done.
So what were the two we were talking about earlier?
Okay. Yes, we'll close. Well, there's a couple that Carmen's looking at. There's a gentleman from West University that left his home. This is all publicly reported. Left his home at 4 a.m. His wife called him missing and several.
1 a.m. the next day, yeah.
No, that day.
Oh, I thought it was
Same day.
Okay.
Right, Carmen?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A couple hours later.
Okay.
His vehicle, it wasn't a Raptor, but it was like the Dodge version of a Raptor.
TRX.
Yeah. That is found in Bear Creek Park, which is way out west. burned up, and everyone's trying to find him. Everyone's posting on social media. Where is he? He's 3 kids, father.
Brett Dedamore
Is his name?
Governor.
So then last
His
night,
name is on 700 different websites.
Yeah, I know.
I don't think we're breaking this news.
last night the story was,
Found him.
well, no, last night the story was, well, there'd been lawsuits filed against this company in New York. That because these days you have 1 million sleuths. You've got 1 million private investigators out there finding stuff when you news stories. So people start
Facebook
going-
Karens, they don't fuck around.
Yeah, so they go on Twitter and Reddit and all that, and they found these lawsuits in New York state court where he had been sued. He'd taken out loans against, probably had a New York choice of venue there. And so questions are starting to add up. As we record here today on the June 27th, fortunately, he's been found at a bus stop, Greyhound bus stop in San Antonio.
Doesn't sound like he would describe it as fortunately.
Well, yeah. Well, at least good news, you're alive. Bad news, I still have some issues to deal with.
Yeah, you have more issues than you had when you left.
So he is apparently was disheveled, and the authorities determined that he needed mental health assistance. So
What is disheveled? I know how.
Really disheveled 80% of the time.
I was gonna say, like, I look at Kyle's hair and I was like,
before you shave,
what's the opposite of sheveled?
yeah, Bill, you were shoveled.
Don't
Act nonplussed, act plus.
sheveled,
And,
unsheveled.
So anyhow, so Carmen and I were talking about this offline, and we were going to talk about it. There's so many questions that will probably be answered in a week
Yeah.
or less.
So it sounds weird. Like maybe he tried to. So it was reported 10 hours ago, like he planned this, and now they're saying maybe he didn't.
Well, they say it appears that it was pre-planned.
So what's interesting is I can see this both ways. Like,
What?
the obvious thing is he tried to escape responsibility for this stuff and figured I'm going to leave my wife and kids behind, or maybe I'm going to bring them to Mexico, put them on a Ted Cruz will help me bring them back to Mexico.
They can pull it out of the accounts before they're frozen.
Right. The other side is like I had a friend when I was in law school. He was in medical school who was like undiagnosed bipolar, and one day like he packed up and moved to New York and didn't tell anybody. Left behind a wife, left behind a daughter, like an infant, and then like 3 months later, when people were like, well, he probably got murdered, like showed back up in Houston and was like, yeah, I just decided medical school wasn't for me and I was super stressed out. Now, he had a absolutely diagnosed bipolar condition that they figured out after the fact.
Well, sure. Yeah, there's evidence of that.
Like maybe the guy, like, I don't know, maybe he cracked up. Who knows?
Does it say in the story if he was in medical school, Pete?
He's a home builder.
So he is getting mental health treatment is what they're reporting. The problem is that from my perspective is somebody committed an arson. It's a second-degree felony. It's a prison case. And they didn't just burn his truck. They tried to remove all identifying information off of the truck prior to burning it.
Question. So just if I own a car
I can't.
And- and I want to set it on fire, it's illegal.
It's illegal. It's a crime. It's a second-degree felony.
What if it's a really old car in a field at a ranch?
So
Hypothetically,
the statute actually goes through a number of items that might be true. Like, for example, this was in a public place. This was an insured vehicle,
was it a public park?
and so on and so forth. So those are the things that we had to be, no, we can't do that. Take it out into a field on McClellan County.
Yeah, you take it there, and I know a sheriff that'll burn it for you.
Parnell, you got a whole different set of rules out there.
Yes,
Uh,
that's what I'm referring to.
So another question. So he had tried to take off identifying info, but they found the VIN somewhere. Is the VIN on multiple places?
Oh, everywhere.
No one.
And stamped on the motor.
Yes, exactly. They put it all over the vehicle, and a lot of people don't know that. And so they were able to find the VIN number on the vehicle, which is how they knew it was this gentleman's car. And, of course, that turned everything into, okay, is he safe? Did he kill himself? And everyone went out looking for him.
How long was it from the time they identified burning truck to found him in San Antonio bus station?
It was like 2 days. And I guess the issues are that not only did he not pay his debts, he took out like $150,000 in April, $100,000 in May. This is June. Didn't pay any of it back within weeks. He was in default. And on top of that, then we have this vehicle that is burned. He's missing. He's found at a bus station and so forth. So there's a lot of questions, not a lot of answers. And the police say that they're looking into who assisted him with some of these things.
That guy's poor fucking wife. Jesus.
Well, that's the sad thing, is apparently he has 3 little kids and a wife who was concerned. But then my question would be, why did his wife report him missing at 8:45 in the morning if it's normal for him to leave at 4:30 to go to work? Because that happened. So
that's when I said it was the next morning.
I'm not saying anything untoward. I'm not saying anything about anything except to say that somehow the math on this case does not add up. And I think as time goes on, we're going to figure out more. I do know that an arson was committed by someone and that the Houston Fire Department is investigating it. So once we get more information, I think we may see someone charged. I mean,
I can
he committed a crime.
Yeah, this will be on the ID network at some point. We just don't know if it's going to be on Knives with Wives, Crazy Ex-Neighbors. I mean, they've got all kinds of shows on there. It's going to be on one. The facts will reveal which one it will be on.
No doubt.
Brett, if you're out there, we'd love to have you on.
Or his lawyer. Okay. So the next one, the other one you were talking about, Kyle, was that's been, I think that's a fully developed story. Guys have been tried about it, but this one's new. This was 3 San Antonio police officers who were charged with murder last Friday, less than 24 hours after they fatally shot a woman during a police call. So, Carmen, are you aware of the background facts on the case?
I am. This is a case that it was just charged, I think, on Sunday, maybe. So what is today? Tuesday, just a couple days ago. It's an interesting case because the officers, all 3 officers, were charged with murder within 24 hours of this shooting, which is unheard of. But certainly the culture of accountability in law enforcement that we're seeing across the country, which a lot of people think is a good thing. It was on the body cams, which are online. And essentially, this woman was dealing with a mental health issue. She apparently was cutting the wires to the fire alarm in her apartment complex. Officers show up and they try to talk to her. And she basically goes into her house and locks the door. But the window's open and there's a glass door between the officers and her on her back balcony. They keep trying to talk to her. She starts throwing stuff at them. At some point, she had a hammer and tried to throw it and broke the window. And 3 officers standing outside of the window, the door, and the wall between her, they started shooting once because she threw a candle at the window towards them, and they heard her talking again, so they knew that they hadn't hit her, and they all 3 unloaded their weapons.
Oh,
Jesus.
Killed her.
And so,
What was the responding department?
San Antonio.
Police Department.
Whoa.
But what's sad is had this case been presented or occurred 5 years ago,
Yeah.
No way it's charged that quickly at all.
Or we wouldn't know about it.
To a grand jury, it would stay there for months. They would say, oh, the grand jury no-billed it. Sorry about that. And the family would be left to suffer.
you'd probably get a bunch of affidavits from HPD saying we had reasonable suspicion that this was a crack house.
Yeah, candle looked like a weapon that she was brandishing.
Well, and what's interesting,
Body cameras.
she actually did have a hammer at some point, right? And so a lot of people don't know that the law regarding self-defense, which is what they would claim here, applies to everyone the same, including law enforcement. They have the same laws that we do. And so ultimately, the San Antonio Police Department came out and said, look, these officers' behavior was outside of policy and certainly outside of the law to the extent that the threat was not imminent, that they didn't need to act in that moment. Now that they're all going to stand trial for murder, their defensive theory is going to be, of course, we felt like we were in fear for our lives.
Are there any personal facts about this lady? Was she older, younger?
So she's like 46 now.
Yeah.
Like 46, 42, something like that. She had mental health issues. And she even on the video, which is horrible to watch, she says, you don't have a warrant. She's talking about all this crazy stuff. At some point, he said, look, you're going to get shot. And she's like, fine, shoot me. I mean, it was quite clear she was not rational in her communication with law enforcement.
What were they responding to again?
She allegedly was cutting the wires to the fire alarm of the apartment complex where she lived.
And then they said they used deadly force as the person was and they didn't have a warrant, and she was locked inside her own apartment.
So they showed up and tried to have an interaction with her, and she went into her apartment and shut the door.
Which is fair. You can do that.
Right. And so instead of waiting for other officers, trying to deal with a person who's clearly upset and who's locked themselves into their own home, they decided to try and drag her out kicking and screaming, literally, except they used guns and they gunned her down inside her own apartment. And again, through windows, doors, and walls. And all 3 officers discharged their firearms towards her, supposedly because she threw a candle towards.
She threw a candle in her own home at officers who were not in her home and did not have a warrant to enter her home or arrest her in general.
Right. All on body cam. But again, a couple of years ago, wouldn't have been charged at all. So the fact that it was charged within 24 hours, again, is the current climate of accountability for law enforcement officers, which has a reverberating effect for law enforcement because they're worried about being charged. I mean, these officers who are blue-collar workers, for all intents and purposes, are charged with murder. And now they're going to be fighting for their lives rather than being in service to their community.
I mean, based on the facts that are, in the public right there, they should be fighting for their freedom. I mean, there's a lot wrong. I mean, Crim Pro for me was a long time ago. There's a lot of red lights they ran through to get there.
Yeah, so the Memphis, there's a fellow that was died in Memphis, and that was kind of known as the first one where there was a quick charging of the officers. Prior to that, obviously, we know George Floyd, we know was the big one, but there were several others in a string that kind of culminated. Like George Floyd was like the floodgates.
I can't believe Breonna Taylor. That was the one that this reminded me of because they shot her through a bedroom window.
Same.
Yeah, and they got not charged or it's dismissed. I can't remember how that one fell out on the criminal side for the officer, but I don't think the officer faced criminal charges on that. Or maybe he did and didn't get a conviction. And that one was on video. That was kind of like the first one as far as when somebody's inside their home.
And he shot through the window. Yeah.
What was the case we were talking about? The one that there was just a continuance?
AJ, that was the Armstrong case. It's been tried, and been hung verdict 2 times already?
2 prior hung juries.
He beat his parents to death or something. I can't remember what he did. He
Allegedly.
or allegedly
Were shot in their bedroom while they slept.
And his father was played the NFL, and young man did he go to Bel Air High School or Episcopal or?
I think.
Okay. Yeah, so that's almost on the news. You must not watch this.
Yeah, the case is like a decade old, right? It's old.
When you get older,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, when you get older, Kyle, you watch the 10 o'clock news.
I'm in bed by 9:30 every
Yeah.
night.
I actually am too. I usually lay down.
No, I watched. I'm just creature habit. So yeah, that's been the news story that's recent. It's been continued. Was it the 3rd trial?
So it's 3rd trial. It's fascinating because I don't think in my research, we've ever tried a case a 3rd time with 2 hung juries. And what's interesting about those numbers is it was 8-4 guilty the first time, 8-4 not guilty the second time, and we're going into the 3rd trial.
All right, so just give me the background, like I'm an idiot in 2 minutes or less. Why does this? So, kid is the only person with access to the home. His parents end up dead. What are the issues that keep leading to this mistrial, if any, or do anybody have an idea? I actually know his lawyer, Chris Collings. He and I used to be right next to each other, so maybe we should call him. He'd probably come on, but
Not right now. Yeah. There's a gag order.
You know what I mean.
I know, but there's a gag order in place. The trial starts up again on July 31st, but essentially there are phenomenal lawyers on both sides of the bar. This is a case where you have a 16-year-old kid whose parents are dead, whose entire family supports him, who looks like he's 16, and now he's 23, 7 years later. He's charged with capital murder. And so we're looking at potentially putting him in prison for the rest of his realistic life. And there's an alarm system issue and a notion that there was somebody else inside the house.
Well, so who else? Is there a reason or motivation they?
So it's been hung. It's been tried in a jury 8-4 for conviction, and then a second jury 8-4 against. And so,
any idea that there was some motivation for him to want to kill his parents, or?
So the state brought in the second trial, a stack of text messages that suggested he did this because he wanted to, have freedom as a young man, because he's mad at his parents about taking the car away, just petty, high school things that kids deal with their parents. And that was kind of the suggestion as a motive, because they really don't have a motive here. That's part of the problem. And so they tried to make something to do out of that. But at the end of the day, they have no motive and they have no physical evidence connecting him to the offense. And that in combination with the fact that he was 16 and they're certifying him as an adult, I think it's made it very difficult for these juries to reach a conclusion.
Typically,
I should watch the news.
I mean, typically you don't have a third, you don't have two hung juries, because at some point after a hung jury, there's further negotiations, or maybe the prosecution gets the feedback and they're like, we're not going to win on a second one, and they cut their losses, or defense realize it's almost like in a civil world, they all do mock trials and to get juror feedback to assess their negotiating position. Is that how it works criminal typically?
It generally does, but this case, I can tell you that there's no one giving an inch on it. The prosecution clearly believes he committed these murders, which is why they're trying it for a third time, even though they've had an 8-4 not guilty jury come back, unable to reach a verdict. And the defense, of course, who's representing this young man who has his entire life in front of him, a new baby, just got married a couple of years ago. He's 23 years old. So they're going to fight this out. So it's going to be interesting to see if we can get a verdict this time, because the last two trials took a month to try and several days of deliberation without a verdict.
Okay, so that begins July 31st. Kyle, you can start saying up to maybe 10:30 now and keep up with it.
Where did they live? Just out of curiosity.
Bel Air, I believe.
50. Oh, yeah. Palmetto.
Okay, well, good. Well, Kyle's learning what the 7 years worth of research you're doing right there on.
So what's
General 11.
What's been
Break it down for you. You don't need to be in a courtroom.
It's going to take more than your 30-second analysis, because this thing is thick. So what's been going on in politics the last 7 or 8 years? Anything interesting?
Ted Cruz went to Cancun in response to a freeze on the statewide, and then a bunch of people died. And then ERCOT actually got off the hook from the Supreme Court last week.
Fascinating. Do we want to do 10 questions?
Yeah.
You ready for 10 questions?
Sure.
You're ready.
I've vetted these, Carmen.
Rimmed or what?
Yeah,
Lighting
these, and you'll be okay with them.
Pete, you want to do these or me?
Go for it. You're the guy.
All right, this is the Dirty Verdict questionnaire. 10 questions. These are kind of rapid fire, so just do your best. You seem pretty sharp, though. I like your chances. What is your favorite word, profane or otherwise?
Aggressive.
What is your least favorite word?
Stupid.
What noise or sound do you love?
Your laughter.
What noise or sound do you hate?
Anything that a man thinks is funny.
If you were reincarnated as some other plant or animal, what would it be?
Try again.
What profession other than your own would you like to try?
Barista.
What profession other than your own would you not like to try?
Security guard.
Or you say prosecutor.
What trait do you most admire in opposing counsel?
Generosity.
What trait do you most admire in a judge?
Work ethic.
What trait do you hope others see reflected in your work?
Passion.
Carmen Roe, appreciate your time. Fantastic job. I learned a ton. We're going to be doing a part 2, which is going to be like kind of an hour-long extended look at the history of bond forfeiture legislation. And we're hoping you're going to come back and join Bob for that.
Yep. And I want to ask this one question. On the rapid fires, how long do you think it'll take before, when you ask if you were reincarnated as some other plant or animal, what would it be that someone's going to name a plant?
Depends on when you ask me.
Cactus.
Cannabis, brah.
No. I was going to say a daffodil. I get that a lot.
I want to be a mushroom.
Yeah.
No, Carmen, thanks for staying with us so long and covering areas that we have no idea.
Yeah, we're dumb.
That was really great.
With that, we'll
Appreciate having you.
wrap it up this week. Thanks very much. We'll see you next week.
Tune in, Channel 11.
Boom.
Thanks for joining us this week. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also visit our website at www.dirtyverdict.com. If you are interested in coming on as a guest or have a story idea, please email us at story@dirtyverdict.com.